Personal log of Dr. Gears. Note: dates and some sensitive information removed by central records. Original documentation available upon approval. Date: woke up early due to the sound of explosion. A new agent entered the containment area of SCP-236 and accidentally stepped on a unit. The resulting explosion almost set off a chain reaction but was contained successfully. Unknown if agent survived, but doubtful. Was approached by Dr. in the hall shortly after leaving my dormitory in regards to a new subject being introduced to SCP-212. I am to supervise and document the proceedings, which will take place tomorrow. The last subject exposed did not survive and expired in such a way as to require lockdown of the test area. It is hoped the current exposure will not repeat this outcome. Spent most of the morning preparing documents for transfer to central records. We are currently updating our database to an all-digital format. Concerns have been raised due to the sheer volume of data. Anyone could accidentally gain access to sensitive documents, copy them, and cause a security breach. This possibility is remote, but with my own work taking several weeks to compile thus far, I feel it could be valid. Lunch was eventful. Several members of Zeta-9 had returned from a mission and proceeded to state their superiority to several other teams present in the R4 lunchroom, most notably Phi-1, who stated, quote, "keep their pansy little asses in the base while we do all the damn deep work." A sizable altercation broke out, which was separated by Agent Dorlin. After his exposure to SCP-212, he has shown remarkable aptitude with his improvements, notably the scythe arms. The rest of the lunch period was uneventful, with the exception of SCP-529 stealing a piece of ham from my plate. Reported it to site security, who told me, quote, "Don't worry about it, she does that sometimes." Afternoon devoted to SCP review. Meeting scheduled for tomorrow with SCP-172. Have received information that a new assistant will be assigned to me within the week, the old one having been removed from active service due to exposure to SCP-008. The assistance will be helpful as the massive amount of compiling and updating is starting to affect my other duties. Date: morning uneventful despite brief lockdown due to a false alarm. Met with a new lab assistant after entering office. Iceberg is a newly appointed assistant and seems somewhat eager to prove himself. Assigned several stacks of reports to be compiled and sent to central records to him. I dislike handing off work, but I cannot do both jobs at once. Received word that the subject set to be exposed to SCP-212 has failed a drug screening and will have to be postponed. Met with SCP-172. He seemed very pleased today and presented me with a blueprint for a non-lethal handgun. Explained that it uses a sequence of chimes and air pulses controlled by a central mainspring and a timing drum to emit a series of tones and vibrations, causing instant loss of balance, partial blindness, and vomiting. Requested SCP-172 to create a prototype, to which he replied, quote, "Yes, comrade. Consider it already done." SCP-172 appears to be working on a new module as well. Inquired as to its function, to which SCP-172 responded, quote, "Your agents seem lazy, comrade. I will show them the proper way to drill an exercise." Will inquire with site supervision about whether or not this should be allowed. Remainder of meeting uneventful. SCP-172 commenting several times that he felt tired, appeared to be winding down, and returned to storage compartment after meeting conclusion. Ate lunch in office. Iceberg appears to have made a great deal of headway in the reports. I think I'll take him to assist with testing SCP-882. We lack documentation as to the exact time required for SCP-882 to regain animation, and the time needed to manifest the grinding in subjects. It appears Iceberg has yet to encounter high-security SCP. This will be a valuable learning experience for him, who will be flying to the containment site at the end of the week. Minor security breach in the evening. SCP-076 exited containment area with extreme force, causing several injuries. Members of security were talking outside of SCP-076's containment area. 076 misheard a comment and took offense. Situation resolved and a new blast door has been ordered. Staff have been reminded not to remain in SCP containment areas when not actively working. Date: long flight to the containment area. On our approach was informed that a security breach had occurred. Agents moving SCP-882 to the testing area had an accident, causing 882 to leave its secure transportation tank and strike a large metal blast door. 882 immediately bonded with the door, and the entire area has been locked down. 8 agents and several members of the staff were sealed in with 882. Landed in the evening with snow starting to fall. Informed that a storm is coming and will be unable to leave for 2 weeks. Containment area was mostly unsealed, with the exception of several areas near the site of the accident. Lockdown is being maintained for the area until the full extent of 882 infection is contained. All areas connecting to the accident site have been disconnected from the main containment facility via explosives. It appears that several rooms and halls were infected before physical separation could be achieved. 882 spread via wiring and other metallic devices. 2 agents, Dr. and 3 D-Class personnel are still sealed in the affected areas. Command has informed me that testing will continue as planned, with a new focus on the group dynamic when under extreme stress. Security cameras appear to be unaffected by the infection, and observation has begun. Assign my assistant to the setup of a central observation post with several CCTVs and other monitoring devices. He has been very quiet. Several of those sealed in with 882 appear very upset. 882 is now only 26% covered in rust, and has started to make small, jerky movements. Date? The first 24 hours of exposure to SCP-882 have yielded a great deal of data. Auditory effects begin after 18 hours of exposure, varying by 1 to 2 hours depending on proximity to 882. The closer a subject is, the quicker the effect. 882 has started converting the door to which it is attached into more gears and cogs, current projections putting full conversion at 56 hours. Other metallic objects connected to the door have not yet begun to convert. SCP-882 is operating normally, no rust visible anywhere on any observable surfaces, and all components moving in ways consistent to their construction. As has been documented, no form of power is visible, and nothing can be detected to account for 882's continued operation. 1 D-Class has died. All personnel isolated with 882 have started to report hearing noises. However, D882-1 appears to have been more drastically affected. D882-1 was observed to have spent long periods of time staring at SCP-882, attempting several times to touch it before being stopped by Agent. The staffs have created a dormitory in the isolated area, comprised of the break room and 2 adjoining offices. Two-way communication with the isolated staff is not possible, the PA system being damaged during the isolation procedure, but those isolated have been very vocal. Many requests have been made, most pertaining to time of rescue. D882-1 was notably more quiet than the rest of the staff, and seemed to have become extremely withdrawn. D882-1 left the sleeping area at 4:46 a.m., walking out of the living quarters and into the containment area of SCP-882. D882-1 stared at SCP-882, and then put his hands on the main mass of 882. Iceberg was observing at the time, said D882-1 appeared to be sleepwalking. D882-1 was immediately drawn to the main mass, screaming and attempting to remove himself from SCP-882. D882-1 was completely drawn into the main mass in 14 seconds. The other isolated staff quickly awoke and ran to the SCP-882 after hearing D882-1 screaming. Both of the remaining D-Class and Dr. became notably upset. D882-2 vomiting and fainting after seeing SCP-882. Both agents advanced on the observation camera, asking repeatedly to be removed and showing a high degree of anger. D882-2 and D882-3 have shown a strong dislike for Dr. Today has been uneventful. The storm came in and we are unable to leave our current research area. My assistant was visibly upset by the actions of D882-1 and requested an early observation rotation. The wind is very strong and some observational equipment has been compromised, but no vital systems as of yet. The Containment Site Command has informed me that we may lose the audio feed to the isolated section in the next few days, due to damage done during separation. The site is still in an emergency situation, and the remaining facilities are somewhat cramped. My assistant and I have our research area and 1 room for sleeping/eating. Rations are limited to Foundation emergency rations until we can receive our supply drop, which may be some time. Iceberg has been withdrawn since the incident with SCP-882 and D882-1. His performance has not been impaired, but he appears distracted at times. Date? Received an emergency supply drop today in the middle of a break in the storm. Weather reports show that this storm will continue for several more days, and no drop will be possible after this short lull. The drop missed the mark by only a few yards, and all the supplies were still intact, but Agent was visibly upset when he was told the container had impacted with his jeep. Unloading went quickly, and Iceberg assisted in installing much-needed lab equipment. The storm began to pick up shortly before we finished unloading, and it appears a member of the staff has contracted frostbite in his hands and face. Amputation of the fingers may be needed. The additional medical and food supplies are a welcome boost, and many staff have shown a great deal of pleasure about moving off emergency rations. Subjects in the containment area have started to show signs of auditory hallucination. This appears to manifest after 32 hours of exposure to SCP-882. Agent has committed suicide. He used his service pistol to shoot himself through the temple last night. The remaining subjects were visibly upset by this, D882/2 appearing to go into mild shock. Food supplies appear to be running low as well. However, due to emergency protocols, we are unable to resupply the subjects at this time. Agent is extremely upset and has spent several hours speaking to the cameras, mostly insults, threats, and sobbing. Agent has also tried several times to destroy the cameras, but has been unsuccessful. Doctor appears to be the most affected by SCP-882 and its auditory effects. He has already placed several metal objects on SCP-882's affected area, lessening what he calls, quote, that horrible screeching and grinding. These actions have angered the other subjects, who have instructed him, quote, not to make things worse. This appears to run counter to action, as every subject in the containment area has, at some point over the last 24 hours, added metal to SCP-882. At the current rate, all metal in the containment area will be consumed and converted by SCP-882 within 48 hours. The storm has grown, and is now strong enough to cause some outside walls to creak and vibrate. I have expressed concern over the broadcast range of SCP-882, but local staff state that the effect is proportional to its size, and that we are still well out of range. My assistant and I currently work in an area lined with SCP-148, but the rest of the staff may run the risk of exposure. I've asked Iceberg to monitor the staff and note any aberrant behavior. Date? Unable to make complete log entry. Broadcast range of SCP-882 drastically underrated. Several security breaches with multiple members of site staff exposed to SCP-882. Doctor appears to have gone insane. Several members of the site staff and security killed by Dr. and other members of staff exposed to SCP-882. Iceberg and I have barricaded ourselves in our shielded testing area. Foundation contacted, an emergency response team has been dispatched, but there is no set arrival time due to the weather conditions. Several sections of the site have been damaged, and the heating system appears to be failing. SCP-882 has been allowed to breach emergency containment. Several subjects exposed to SCP-882 are attempting to gain access to our testing area. Temperature is steadily dropping. Date? Extraction from site was made at hours, approximately 6 days after distress beacon was issued to the Foundation in regards to the second security breach by SCP-882. Delay in response due to severe weather conditions. Currently en route to site for debriefing. Response team found the entire site compromised, and a majority of the staff dead due to exposure to freezing temperatures, exposure to SCP-882, or murder. Remaining staff recovered and placed in quarantine with minimal injury. SCP-882 cut back to standard containment parameters, with the resulting metal disposed of quickly. Reconstruction of containment area will commence after judicial review and inquest into both containment failure incidents. Iceberg provided a great deal of the physical force needed to repel SCP-882 affected staff during the security breakdown. He has shown an amplitude for improvised hand-to-hand combat weapons, as well as handheld explosives and incendiary devices, primarily flashbang grenades and Molotov cocktails. The event appears to have altered his personality, observably in the excess of force against affected staff, far exceeding the amount needed in some cases. He has suffered several broken bones, frostbite in his hands and feet, and may have had a very mild SCP-882 exposure. He is being remanded to medical for evaluation, then to Dr. Glass for psychological evaluation. I have suffered minimal physical damage, limited to moderate frostbite in the hands and face. I am also being remanded for medical and psychological evaluation. After being cleared by medical staff, Iceberg will begin processing the data gathered from SCP-882, while I gather information on the status of current research projects. In light of the events of the containment breach, I plan to file a request for SCP-172 regarding a personal protection device.